Assalamualaikum and hi. In this video, we will show to you about consumption, investment, saving, export and import in Bangladesh. But before we look further, let me introduce you about Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a country in South Asia with Dhaka as their capital. The size of this country is just 147,570 km square with population 161 million people in 2018. That made them one of the most densely populated countries in the world. In Bangladesh, they run their export and import trade using port of Chittagong, which is the largest seaport in this country. 90% of export and import trades in Bangladesh was handled by this port. Bangladesh also has the world's 39th largest economy in terms of exchange rate and also the world's 29th largest in terms of purchasing power parity. That's made them one of the fastest growing economies and one of the fastest growing middle income countries. So, to know further about consumption, investment, saving, export and import in Bangladesh, keep watching this video.
Every time you purchase food at the drive-thru or pull out your debit or credit card to buy something, you are adding to consumption. Consumption is the one of the bigger concept in economics, and it is extremely important because it helps to determine the growth and success of the economy. Business can open up and offer all kinds of great products, but if we don't purchase or consume their products, they won't stay in business for very long. If they don't stay in business, many of us won't have jobs or the income to buy goods and service. Consumption can define in different ways, but it is described as the final purchase of goods and service by individuals. Many topics in economics explore how the income of the families and individuals affects consumption and spending habits. Because of that, consumption is the most important component on aggregate demand. Although consumption represents different things to different people in rural areas, many economics and social issues are related to perceptions of and attitudes towards consumption. In Bangladesh, the household consumption was increased as shown on the data above. If we observe the year 2000 until 2005, even the income in US dollar value decreased, the consumption still increased.
A long-standing view of the macroeconomic dynamics of the growth process was that increasing saving, when transformed into productive investment, would help achieve an economic takeoff. The pickup in physical capital accumulation, a 6.6% average growth rate over 1991 to 2006 compared to 4.0% in the preceding decade, was led by private investment and financed principally by higher domestic saving. Furthermore, the increasing in the investment to GDP ratio has been almost entirely due to dynamism in private investment, with the investment in the public sector remaining almost unchanged as a proportion of GDP. Both investment and saving rates have steadily improved, thus paving the way for superior growth performance. Trend in investment in Bangladesh show a decline in public sector participation compared to the private sector in the country's economic activities. This is a clear reflection of government policy to gradually withdraw government intervention and encourage the private sector in all spheres of economic activities. The success of the government in this area is reflected in the share of private sector investment in GDP, which increased to 90.5% in 2010-11 from 11.8% in 1993-1994. On the other hand, public investment increased from 6.6% in 1993-1994 to 5.3% in 2010 and 11. Another significant characteristic of the last decade is the reduced fluctuation in the country's annual economic growth. In the past, large variation in the growth rate, among others, was a significant factor that inhibited greater investment flow and reduced its productivity in Bangladesh. In short, the economy has now become more resilient, having diverse source of growth along with a greater capacity to deal with short-term fluctuation.
In macroeconomic, saving is income, not spent or deferred consumption. Bangladesh has one of the worst domestic saving rate among the developing countries in general and South Asians. In 1991, domestic saving rate was 18.23% of GDP, which was much more higher than average growth rate of the same period. The domestic saving rate is stagnant for last couple of years. In 2001, it was 18%, staying at 18.27% in 2004. The national saving also increased marginally from 22.41% in 2001 to 22.49% in 2004. It is underpinned by an increasing flow of foreign remittances from the immigrant Bangladeshi workers. The lengthy stagnation of the domestic saving may be largely explained by the deteriorating income distribution scenario in the Bangladesh economy, as the poor who demonstrate higher propensity to save are being deprived of their proportionate share in incremental national income.
Bangladesh's major achievement in economy was during the 1990s, which were the robust growth in exports, which has put the country into top 20 countries that shows fastest export expansion. At the same time, Bangladesh was in the process of changing from a predominant aid-dependent economy to a trading economy. Bangladesh's export sector had registered an average growth rate of 14.53% per annum throughout the 1990s. Average of the growth rate on export sector, which is 18.34% during the first half of the 1990s, was much more higher compared to the second half, which is 10.73%. Almost all of the exports items experienced an average growth rate during the first half. Such a moderate growth rate of the export sector was possible because of the growth of the exported items. Then, during the second half of 1990s, the average growth rate of some of these exported items has drastically fallen. In final year 1 until final year 3, the average growth rate of exported items has fallen to 4.77% due to declining in percentage of some of the exported items.
Bangladesh is an open economy nation which involves foreign sector as indicated in four sector economy. In foreign sector, it involves import. During the first half of the decade, liberalization policy taken by the government for swelling imports gave support to the flow of inputs for export-oriented and domestic industries and led to a surge in consumer and non-production related imports. As a result, the total imports recorded an average growth rate of 14.53% in the said period. During the second half of 1990s, almost every imported items registered lower average growth compared to the previous period. The average growth rate of total imports in the second half of the 1990s slowed down to 7.63%. The import growth arrested a positive tone during the first 3 fiscal years of the new decade after 1990s. The average import growth was 16.84%, which is the highest average growth rate among the 3 compared periods.